Get ready to dive into the comic book realm where heroes rise and villains take the helm. We're here to dissect the stories and the art. Our source material, we tear the panels apart.
Welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And we're heading back to Charming. Now we've got volumes 4, 5, and 6. Granted, we're only going to be talking about 4 this first episode. It's going to be split into 3 episodes for the feed, but we're going to be talking 4, 5, and 6 right now. This is Mark's bookshelf, right?
No, as a matter of fact, we had done Sons of Anarchy, the show, and I saw there were comments like, oh, we should kind of whip through this entire series. We'll break these up over a couple of episodes. I actually don't own 4, 5, and 6. I went to buy them. They're like out of print or something. I can't get them off of Amazon, so I had to put on my pirate hat.
Sailed the 7 seas.
I sailed the high seas, sir. I went down to J.V. Jones's locker and I read these books.
Nice.
I think I could have bought volume 4, but volume 5 and 6 are out of print now, from what I could tell. When I went to Amazon, you could buy them on eBay or specialty bookstores that still had them, but they were like $30 or $40 a piece.
Damn, they're out of print. If it's out of print, the price is going to go up, and that's usually what you see.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's unfortunate.
I had to read them as digital floppies.
Oh, well, that's all right. Our first volume, volume 4 here, is going to be issues 15 through 18. And do you remember much of the sentiment that we came away with from the first 3?
I think a fair assessment of the Sons of Anarchy books is, do you like crime noir? If you do, and you like the characters from Sons of Anarchy, here's a nice little supplement of further stories of this gang. I think the other thing we thought about was we were wondering if these were unused television scripts.
Yeah.
That got turned into these comics, because I couldn't tell you any major differences between what I read in the comics and what we saw on TV. There's the occasional side, like we'll talk about it with one of these. You get Happy's origin story, that's probably not an episode unless it tied into the larger narrative. That wasn't going to be something they were going to get into in the show.
Right. And I remember our last discussion, I did say I wanted to see a story about Happy because we got the Tig backstory. And I think one of the main players that we usually see on TV is Happy. They can only shine a light on so many members of SAMCRO. Happy is just kind of like this one guy. He's always the one that can do the dirty deeds if they need to be done. But you don't really know much about his history. They don't do any episodes to focus on him. So at the end of this, at the end of first 3, I was like, man, I really want to see a Happy issue. And I was so excited that we actually get to delve into that. And that's kind of what this 4th volume is. It's 4 issues 15 through 18, but each story is focusing on a member of SAMCRO. Our first one focuses on Jax, the second one's on Juice, then our third one's on Bobby, and finally Happy.
Love the Bobby story.
Oh, yeah. That was good. That was a fun one. So that's kind of what we get here in this 4th volume. So I'll go down through my synopsis. Let me break down our creative team real quick. There's not much of a big change from what we had before. Ed Brisson writing all 4 of these issues. Matthias Bergara is what I'll go with here on art. Our colorist for issue 15 was Michael Spicer, and Paul Little did the last 3 issues of this volume, 16, 17, and 18. It's always been lettered by Ed Dukeshire, I'm pretty sure. So that's our creative team. So issue 15, Jax Teller's SUV gets stolen. So Jax leads the Sons of Anarchy to recover it and assert their dominance, a quest that takes them to Stockton and a confrontation with Kyle Hobart. Now, do you remember Kyle at all?
No.
I think it was the first season. There was some type of carnival happening at the school, and this previous member showed up, and they had kicked him out.
The guy whose tattoo they burned off of him.
Exactly. That's who this Kyle guy is. And they run into Kyle Hobart, a disgraced former SAMCRO member. Kyle's betrayal in 2003 when he left Opie Winston to face a 5-year sentence alone continues to haunt him. Now working as a mechanic, Kyle has stripped the stolen SUV, complicating his already fraught relationship with the club. When Kyle's son Charlie intervenes with a shotgun, the conflict exposes the personal cost of SAMCRO's violent world. Jax ultimately spares Kyle and Charlie, delivering a warning to stay out of Charming and urging Kyle to break the cycle of violence for his son's sake. This moment of mercy reveals Jax's internal conflict. Jax is always conflicted.
Yes.
Always conflicted. All right, issue 16, we focus on Juice. Juice finds himself entangled in a web of lies when his business partner, Vince, claims his ex, Evan, is blackmailing him over a sex tape.
There were a couple of these where I wish I could have seen them in the show. This was one of them.
Yeah.
I would have loved... We'll talk about it. You're just trying to get to your plot synopsis. I'm sorry.
Right.
But I tell you, like, there's a handful of these issues where I was like, oh my God, this story is so good. And I would have loved to have seen, it's different to see something dramatic played out in the written word as opposed to on television. When we get to it, I really need to talk about when Juice catches up with the guy that is said to be blackmailing his partner.
Right.
How that plays out.
Juice agrees to help his buddy here. And then he finds out that Vince had stolen from Evan, 30 grand. So this is the guy. So Vince is his partner. Evan's this guy that supposedly had stole or was blackmailing him, but we find out that that's not the case. Evan had actually come to find restitution because he had money stolen from him. Vince had stole money from him. So he wasn't back there to get revenge. He wasn't blackmailing him or anything. He's like, hey, you owe me money. So Vince tried to pull on Juice's heartstrings, sent him on the path to confront Evan, and then when he does confront Evan, he finds out what the truth is. The situation spirals as Juice discovers Vince fabricated the blackmail story to manipulate him into intimidating Evan. Disgusted by Vince's deceit, The
juice was loose.
Juice forces him to relinquish his share of their marijuana dispensary, ensuring Evan receives restitution. Issue 17, Bobby Munson's attempt to reconcile his biker identity with fading dreams unfolds in a chaotic
that old
night.
lady just take his shit already. My God. Having been somebody who's trying to take his shit at work and getting calls from his boss constantly or a charge nurse, just let people poop, for God's sake.
Yes, I had that in my notes. Like Bobby, forming at this failing bar, Bobby obtains some drunken businessmen in exchange for a generous payout. The night spirals into reckless gambling and debauchery and the theft of Bobby's club jacket, a grave insult to the Sons of Anarchy. Bobby tracks the thieves to their hotel and retrieves his cut in a violent confrontation, restoring his pride and the club's honor. Teaming up with a feisty waitress named Edith, Bobby ensures the business pay for their insult both in cash and in their dignity. Yes, sir. Issue 18. This is the Happy story set in 1987, where Happy Lowman's gritty origin story comes to light. Struggling to support his sick mother, Happy turns to petty drug dealing, which ends in violence when a rival gang attacks him. Sent to juvenile detention, he runs into Tig, which foreshadows his future with the Sons of Anarchy. Driven by desperation and anger, Happy retaliates against the gang after he gets out, killing one of the members in a violent outburst that cements his reputation for ruthlessness. Though his mother is devastated by his actions, Happy feels a grim satisfaction embracing the outlaw path. The issue ends with Happy's arrival in Tacoma, where he meets the Sons of Anarchy and begins his journey as one of the club's most feared enforcers, marking each kill with a signature smiley face tattoo.
Everyone has to have a gimmick.
It was nice to see another story about Kyle. I remember watching that episode, you could tell there was history between him. We find out that Kyle put his son on a path to steal vehicles so they could turn around and part him out. Of course, his son made the mistake of, well, it might have been on purpose. I think it was on purpose, because when Jax confronts him, his son's like, that bitch deserved it.
Right.
And so his son totally meant to steal the car. Kyle had no idea. He would have never done that because he wants to stay away, out of the way of the club.
They
anyway.
burned this man.
Yes, they did.
He's not fucking with SAMCRO.
He is not. No, he's not. I did have to go to the wiki, though, because I didn't know who Kyle Hobart was off the top of my head. So you'd probably have to be a pretty big fan, although they kind of touch on it just a little bit in the story.
Well, it's so funny. When you mentioned his name, and I was like, no, I don't know who that is. When I realized that his back was all burnt up, I'm like, oh, it's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know what his name was.
Right. And when he gets into the confrontation with Jax, Jax is saying, hey, what are you doing here? Why did you steal my mom's car? And of course, he's trying to explain, no, I did not. But Jax is like, well, somebody has to pay for this. Kyle's like, it's his son, but he isn't saying anything about it. He's like, I'll deal with it myself. There is a point where he starts talking about Opie, and this occurred after Opie had died in prison. Opie comes up and he's like, Opie would still be, at least I didn't get him killed or something along those lines. I was sitting there like, dude, you're dead. Jax is going to kill you now just because you ran your mouth about that. He signed his own death warrant practically, but it doesn't end up like that. We get I wouldn't say a softer side to Jax, but a more like when he finds out that Hobart is having his son go out there, he finally is kind of, he eases up. They're not going to kill anybody, but he's again sends a message that says, "Don't come back. I don't want to see you again. But I also want you to I want you to think about what you're doing to your son. I want you to think about how you're sitting him out there on the same path that you were in. Get him off of that path. You got to change. Go ahead."
So I've been thinking a lot about the show and the Jax character. I mentioned when we did the television reviews, and I may have even said it on the last comic review, that these are morally corrupt, evil people, but they're the heroes of the show. The writers have to do a deft bit of moral and literal gymnastics in order to get you, the viewer, to be sympathetic towards the hero, or the show just falls apart. A constant in Jax's character, because when I'm watching the show, I didn't notice it as much, but reading the book and then thinking back about the show, I'm like, oh my God, they do this every time. Jax can't just be a straight up killer. Mm-hmm. You won't be sympathetic towards him. The culture of this motorcycle crew has been time and time again. Nobody gets away. I mean, they operate as the mafia. Mm-hmm. They operate as any organized criminal organization. No disrespect will be tolerated. Everything is meted out with the harshest of punishment. Mm-hmm. Death, usually. The thing about Jax is he's always letting somebody go. Jax is always morally conflicted. It's the one thing they're pinning their entire hopes that you'll be sympathetic to him on. Right. Is that if Jax follows the code of the motorcycle club, then he has to kill a lot of people. Because, again, this is a soapy drama. In the comic book is just as soapy as the show. Mm-hmm. It's soapy drama about a violent motorcycle gang constantly getting into trouble. Them damn Duke boys are just always in a heap of trouble. Mm-hmm. They're either always fucking up or somebody's fucking with them. And Jax is always in this position of, I have to kill him. Think about how many stories over the course of the 3 volumes we're going to talk about. There's a situation where somebody is somebody's family. Right. Like a nephew or son, or like there's a reason. How many times? Take a drink in 7 seasons of Sons of Anarchy where another mob boss was like, this must be met with blood. Mm-hmm. And Jack's like, I can't give him to you. Why can't you? Mm-hmm. You're a deadly outlaw biker gang. Why can't you do it? Because if he does, he's shitbag, and why would you watch the show? You
wouldn't want to root for him, right?
The same beat in these comics over and over again. And when I thought about it, it's not that it made me enjoy it less, but I was definitely like, ho-hum.
I've seen this before over and over.
Listening to a death metal album. Yep, that's the same death metal song I've been hearing for 40 years.
And here's the other thing. Now, granted, it may not apply to this story as much, but other stories as we go through these volumes, it definitely applies. You know how the story ends with Jax. So you know who's going to usually make it out unscathed or what. So sometimes when you're reading these stories, there isn't that much consequence.
Attention to it, they all live.
So
will Opie get out of the situation with the mill? Yes.
Believe it or not, Piney's going to still live. Don't worry.
That last issue where they're trying to kill the Irish mobster, the IRA guy, and they're all like on the guy's got his gun in Jax's mouth, and oh no, what will ever become of Jax? He lives to the end. That's right.
There's no real tension. That's why I appreciate the backstory ones more, because that stuff isn't explored and you get character development that way. You learn more about the history of what happened. The one thing I liked about this interaction between Hobart and Jax after the rest of the guys leave, they are definitely pointing out how Jax is so conflicted with the club, which is how you start Sons of Anarchy anyway. Hobart looks at him and says, this club isn't a family, it's a disease.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. He is not wrong. So anyway, those were my notes on the first story. I didn't know if you had any for yourself. If not, we can move on to the next one. I only got a couple on the next one.
Let's move on to the next one.
So Juice's story, out of these 4, I'd say Juice's story was the one I liked the least. I only had one note for this story. Juice never seems like a really bad guy. He makes some really stupid decisions, and he is just really misguided.
He doesn't quite have the wherewithal or the wisdom of his peers.
Right. 100%.
And he's kind of a coward.
Yeah.
It did remind me, though, of the last little bit of the Sons of Anarchy. I don't know why this jumped into my head, but I remember when the last bit of Sons of Anarchy, when he's in prison and he has to do favors to get some stuff done. There's a scene where he's going to give up his ass, and he just does it so matter-of-factly.
Oh yeah.
It's so clinical. It's like he's going to get a tooth extracted.
Mhm.
He's about to get something extracted, all right.
Again and again.
Yeah. Like there was no pulling of the pants down while he cries. You know,
Nope.
like, I don't want to go through it. There's nothing like that. It's not reffing and too old to die young. All right, boys, rape them. It's literally just like, let's go.
It's a transaction.
Yeah,
That's the way they looks at it.
He made a face like he was getting a tattoo, and he was getting something tattooed on.
You mentioned there was a part in here where he
All right. So the setup to this is he's in the partnership with a medical marijuana place with this guy who's gay. The guy brings him into the office and he has the sex tape playing. It's like, imagine, Jesse, I call you to a meeting and it's like, we need to talk about the podcast. And behind me is one of my escapades. What I need you to do, Jesse, is I go talk to Robert and settle this business so we can make sure this podcast is running right. Is there a reason you had to play your sex tape behind
You
you?
didn't have to do that.
Yes, that's a part of it.
You did not have to do that.
Funny is like you'd think, like, oh, Rattles is making a big deal out of nothing. No, the story makes a big deal out of this because later on he's like, "Did he play the sex tape for you?"
Yeah.
Damn it, he got me too. I laughed hard at that. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. But the thing I actually wanted to talk about was allegedly the whole thing is this guy is holding up the partner for $30,000. He's saying, if you don't pay me, I'm going to show this tape to people. Juice is already sus about it. He's like, you're a low-level piece of shit criminal in a marijuana place. He's like, well, I'm gay. I don't need people seeing me doing gay stuff on film. And Charming, and he's just like, what are you running for mayor? Who cares? If you don't give us the money, we're gonna play this tape of you. I'm not running for anything. I don't get good. Watch my fat ass have fun. You do that. See if you don't claw your own eyes out. And so he was like, I don't even understand what you're making a big deal about. And he was like, no, I can't have him see my sex tape. Fine, I'll go. And so he goes to the bar, and the guy just has this giant overreaction to to the point where he gets into a car accident. And it's so funny because he realizes that juice has been had. And instead of being angry about it, he's just kind of laughing through it while he's all fucked up from the car accident. He's like, so let me get this straight. And he's explaining, he's like, no. He stole from me is what happened. He stole my inheritance. And then he's overcharging. It's like the scene in The Corner. You know, like, I think an abortion costs like $400. By the time he got to the abortion, it was $600.
Yeah.
Because everyone was trying to get a piece. Anyway, my point being that the way he talked to Juice, and you could kind of see Juice have that cartoon moment of turning into a sucker.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he turns into a lollipop. And, you know, it's like, and again, not to make another comparison to The Wire, but it's very much that bit with Omar and Brother Mozone. You know, it's just like he puts the gun on him, and Brother Mozone's he's like, you killed Brandon. And Brother Mozone's like, I didn't do it. You got the wrong man. He's like, oh, you're just lying to get out of this. And Brother Mozone's like, I've made peace with my God. And Omar turns into, you know, and Omar's like, oh, for fuck's sake. It's a living. And so all of that to get to the bit where Omar's on the phone going, send an ambulance. Someone's been shot. It just hangs up. He's just so irritated with himself and the whole situation.
Oh,
that was Juice in that scene.
Yes,
it was. Explains to him like what happened, that he's been totally had. I hurt this poor man for no good reason. And then he goes back and he confronts him, and the guy's just like, it wasn't me, it was the one-armed man. It was, you know, like anything. He's like, look, I've got 3 nipples. What about my poor mother? You know, like everything. And Juice, you know, Juice, I think they do a better job with of making sympathetic than they do Jax. You know, Juice was like, I'm going to make this right. He got as much money as he could out of the business. He threw Evan out of the business, gave the other guy back his money as much as he could, and was like, this is the best I can do, and we'll get you more as we get it. It was, again, that same matter-of-fact business, like, you know, I think about like Henry Rollins when he was talking in his spoken word about being right and true and honest. You must always do the right thing, as Spike Lee tells us. So Juice is a criminal, a murderer, and a ne'er-do-well, and half an idiot, but he has a code. Every man must have a code. Yeah. I think I've made enough references to other stuff tonight. How about you?
We've got 2 more volumes to go and 2 more stories in this. We'll find.
We've referenced now Pixels.
Yeah, I agree with you, though. Juice definitely, he tried to make things right here. And he caught on pretty quick, which is kind of good. At least they didn't draw it out or anything like that.
Breezy read. Like, I shot through these because they were one-shot deals. I kind of liked it because as we get into the later volumes, they're like the first couple that we read where they take 2 or 3 issues to break through the whole story. Whereas these don't waste a lot of time. This first volume is filled with very efficient stories, which I like.
They knew they had one issue to tell a story, and they got through it real quick.
These are like pulpy crime magazines.
Right.
You know, these are brilliantly told short stories. We're in, we're out, we're efficient, no wasted motion. It's all the things I like. I like to hit it and quit it, Jesse. You know the deal.
Oh, look out. I'd rather stay and play. All right.
Years now, right, Jesse?
You can never trust a Canadian, according to Bobby Munson.
I've often told Andrew, David, and Chris Bailey that. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. No, like, you can't trust any people that come at you with fucking minted paper money. Goddamn Canadians with your funny money.
Yes, this Bobby Munson story was fun. Watching him, all it is just him hanging out in Las Vegas, doing, at this dive bar, trying to, or Reno, I can't remember where they're at, but either way,
he's in Reno.
It's such a, it's a simple thing. Like, okay, go hang out with these bikers. They really want to treat you. They want to hang out with a real outlaw. And he goes over there and hangs out with them. And
like, what is my life right now? What? I'm a dangerous outlaw gun running biker. I got to hang out with these yuppies. What is my life?
So he goes over there and they get into some trouble.
I need the same episode, but as part of the show Legion. So we can make it weird. And it's, I want like Munson to like just have a mental breakdown in the middle of the episode and he goes all kaleidoscope.
That would be crazy.
Sons of Anarchy Homer trip out episode.
My favorite moment of this story is when Bobby realizes what's happening and him and Edith are after these Canadians trying to catch up to the guys, and Bobby is running after them. he runs out of breath because I'm sitting there thinking like, well, that's pretty damn realistic.
The best part of the book is her like you look up a greased up fat tub of lard.
He can't keep. He's like leaning up against the wall trying to chase these guys.
He looks like me when I pushed myself too much at work.
Right, dude. I went up the stairs today and I looked like Bobby Munson trying to run down there. And then what if it wasn't for one of the Canadians falling down accidentally, they would have never caught up with this guy. But yeah, they end up, getting his cut back and then they strip these guys. Edith was fun too. I liked watching Edith.
Great.
I wanted to see both. I want to see another story of these two.
Give me 6 episodes of just Edith, the further stories of Edith and Bobby, and the whole time she's just calling him, "You fat motherfucker."
So yeah, I enjoyed this. I didn't know if you had anything else that you had on
I like Bobby the story. Munson. I think it's funny that, again, the show is written with a certain deference and love of motorcycle culture, but I think there's also the tacit acknowledgement that sometimes these guys die young, right? They get snuffed out in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s even. What if you make it to 50? You look like fucking Bobby and Piney.
Yes, Piney on oxygen, carrying a tank around.
And at some point, this just stops being cool. You're looking back and struggling to get through life because you've made the decision to be a badass outlaw biker. What kind of life is that when youth has left you? All you've got left is this broken down, fat body. You don't look cool anymore. Bobby is desperately trying to hang on to that dangerous image. That's what makes Edith cutting him down that much funnier. She gives no fucks.
Right.
And she just sees right through him. It's sort of like a mirror image of, I'm supposed to be out there dealing with murder and crime, and here I am entertaining yuppies because it's all I can do to afford lunch.
Right. Right.
What has my life become? So I like the issue. That's probably not what I needed to see acted out, but that's a good one for the comics.
Our final issue, I was really waiting for a happy backstory, and we kind of get it. It's not much from what I was expecting. Yeah. I figured it was a violent backstory that led him into what he was doing, but yeah, my notes were, yes, indeed. We get a happy story. Tig meeting Happy was pretty cool. So we kind of get that little bit of, lore, I guess you would say. You kind of get to see Happy become or embrace the violence, not become the person that likes it. But he shines a light on the struggle of trying to make a legit living, especially in those types of neighborhoods. One of the things that happens is Happy gets a job. He's working as a dishwasher. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to help because his mom is sick. She has MS. He's trying to get medicine. And he loves his mom that much, which makes what happened at the end, because when he kills the other drug dealer inside Lowe's or wherever they're at, grabs an axe and takes the axe to that guy's, and deservedly so, because that dude was real. That whole gang was a shitbag. When he kills them, and he has to run. He has to get out of there because the cops are going to come and get him for murder. And he makes his way to Tacoma. And he leaves his mom. Now, I'm sure he's probably sending her money. He's in Tacoma becoming part of us.
Maybe she died of a broken heart.
Oh, that's sad. They didn't show it.
Like Padme.
Like Padme?
She died of a broken heart, Jesse.
That's what I heard. I like the smiley tattoos and all that stuff. So I'm glad we got a Happy story, at least to explore some of his history. But anything you have to say about Happy's story here in issue 18?
Just got me thinking. There's a rap group called Consolidated from back in the 90s. Their big song was Tool and Die, and it was about gun shootings and gun control. They were talking about the rise in school shootings back in the late 90s. Yeah, Google it for me real quick. Consolidated, Tool and Die. I should play the video for you one day on the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox.
I'm really surprised that I've never heard of these guys, to be honest, but
they did not make a huge splash. It's like the one thing that they're known for, and then the world just passed them by. They were uber political.
Came out in 92.
There you go. And now there's a school shooting. We're just like, oh, it must be a day that ends in Y. There's a line in the song Tool and Die about what do you do with a heavily armed youth with no respect for life? And I was thinking about generational trauma, and I was thinking about the lack of social contracting and community that people in certain impoverished, crime-ridden communities go through. Why does a 9-year-old commit armed robbery? Mm-hmm. Is a question that I get asked an awful lot. It's given what I do for a living. And it was we take for granted two-parent households. We take for granted stability of a roof over your head, bills being paid, food on the table. And when you don't have those things, and the generation before you didn't have them, and the generation before you didn't have them, how does a kid commit armed robbery? How does a kid pick up a gun and start shooting people? When you don't have that stuff instilled in you, and you don't have any options, and the way that the world is working, especially in your community, there's nowhere to turn to. I look at Happy, and I don't know if this was the author's intention or not, but it just made me think about how many Happies there are in the world. Mm-hmm. How many kids have access to high-powered killing instruments and have zero respect for life, have no moral compass, are just antisocial, amoral. And it's one of the things I struggle with the show and with this book. Happy's one of the heroes. Mm. We root for Happy. We laugh about it. When that camera pans and it's all right, Happy, take care of it. We're like, whoo, here comes the violence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he grabs the axe.
It's like New Jack coming out in ECW. Oh, shit, here comes New Jack. He's going to hit someone with a vacuum.
Yep.
But Happy is a lot of poor kids out there.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And then we have the nerve to ask, but why is it like this?
And I find it interesting that as tragic as his backstory is, his actual name is Happy because I think his mom was calling him that. So this isn't a nickname that the Sons gave him. This is a name that he was born with. Yeah. I'm curious how Opie got his name because we learned that his name is actually different, I think, in that mill story.
Like Harry Winston.
I don't think we've ever been told as far as I know. Tragic backstory, violent backstory, and sometimes the only thing that makes him happy is the violence. When he is letting loose and killing somebody, there's that right at the end. I think it's the second to last page maybe before they showed the tattoos. The tattoo artist asked him how does that feel? And he just looks down and all you see is this menacing grin on his face. He's like, it feels great. It wasn't too far from what I expected, but I'm glad we got a Happy story. That's all I got, man. You got anything else?
Nope. I'm ready to move on.
Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.